Well, it's great to be back here. How's everyone doing? Very good? You all look so tired here somehow. This week must be a busy, long week for you all, right? Short week? Oh. Oh, 4 days. Okay. Let me ask you, how many people here love to hear stories? Oh yeah, that's good, right? Yeah, yeah. And for those that parents, and I know that you love to tell stories to your kids. And kids love to hear stories. You know, when our daughter was young, we'd tell her a story, and she would just sit there and listen over and over to the same story. They don't get bored of it. Okay, yeah, there you go, right? So, and I bet most of you have remembered some of the stories your parents told you when you're young. I think we all know the story about the boy who cried wolf, right? Yeah, see, we're all nodding our heads. Stories from your teachers, from friends, and from relatives that tell you stories, and you can remember them. Why? Well, there's a reason why. Is this working?
What's the reason?
There's a reason. Okay, so it's medically proven that long-term memories contains information that makes you you. A memory can evolve based on retelling a story. So this is kind of medically proven that as you retell a story over and over and over, okay, you remember the story. So, and most likely by tomorrow, okay, most of you, and not most of you, if not all, will forget what I've spoken here today. I'll be honest, okay. I don't take any offense, okay, okay, okay.
That's Friday Bible study on what
Exactly, okay. By tomorrow, most of you forget what I have spoken already today, okay. And it's no offense taken, and it's medically proven, okay. Okay. I was like, where? Okay. So, but over the years, when I came here to speak, and I think I've been sharing my life stories with you, and I think a lot of you, again, not all, will remember some of the stories I tell you, my life stories. Okay, I open myself, and you remember those stories because stories, okay, evoke long-term memory. Okay, and that's how it is. And I remember stories too. And we love to hear stories about human emotions, triumphs, okay, failures, and some meaningful stories, positive, encouraging, inspiring stories. Well, last month, okay, last 2 months ago, we had the Olympics in Paris, 2024 and everything. And we all cheered for athletes, we all cheer for our teams and everything, and we watch how these athletes train so hard through blood, sweat, and tears to try to achieve to the podium just to get that gold, silver, or bronze. Okay, but do we know their story behind them? How they got to go to where they are today to achieve to the podium, to get that medal? Well, if you see on the picture on your right, okay, that was the Paralympics. And this lady won 7 gold medals. 7 gold in the Paralympic swimming. Now, for those who don't know her story, at the age of 4 years old, she lost her right arm and right leg. And she swam, okay, and got 7 gold medals. Just imagine that. With our 4 limbs, I still can't swim. Okay? Now think about that. Okay? So if you read her story, how she's able to overcome this disability, this challenge, at the age of 4, due to a car accident, she lost both her right side limbs and able to swim and get 7 gold medals is such a huge, amazing task. A huge, amazing, inspiring and motivational stories for all. Well, if you look at the lady on the left, okay, table tennis. Now, what does it say right there? I'm now 58 years old. This is her first Olympics at 58 years old. Now, think about that. So you all have hopes, Okay, a lot of years to go ahead for you young folks there. 58 years old is her first Olympic. If you ever read her story, okay, how she grew up in China, okay, and as a professional table tennis, okay, wasn't able to qualify to the Olympics. But at the age of 58, when she migrated to Chile, the country Chile, she's playing for Team Chile there. She qualified for the Olympics at the age of 58. So there's hope. You read her story. It's amazing how she's able to do that. Okay, so here is what is your story? What is your story? We all have a story to tell. We all have a story. Every one of us have a story. So let me read this. Today I'll be taking a lot of verses from the Paraphrase Bible. That means that it's on. Okay, thanks. So here, what I want you to do when you gather for worship, each one of you be prepared with something that will be useful for all. Sing a hymn, teach a lesson, tell a story, lead a prayer, provide an insight. Take your turn. No one person taking over. Then each speaker gets a chance to say something special from God. And you will all learn from each other. You see, we all have a story to tell. We all come from different backgrounds, different cultures. We all have a story to tell. As like a Christian, okay, that makes it different. You have a story how God was able to guide you. A story how God did a miracle in your life. A story how God was able to lift you through and carry you through a difficult time in your life, and how God has led you out of that difficult, okay? At the same time, someone will be listening to your story, and they can relate, and they can find comfort in that. Knowing the fact that you've gone to a difficult time, a difficult situation, and was able to be lifted out, how God lifted you out, they will also find comfort. They say, wow, God will also lift me out from my difficult time, from my situation. So there's two sides of the stories here. The one who's telling the story, the one who's receiving the story. So they will able to relate. Well, y'all say, what's all this to do with mission? And I know this is the beginning of Mission Month. What does this story, your story, have to do with mission? Come on, Yves. What is it about? What's it ties it in? Okay. Well, I want to share with you a different way of seeing missions and mission field. Okay. I think the way I grew up is seeing mission is that when you see a missionary come over and they will just say, well, I was in this country here, this is what I did. You can hear the things they did afterwards and how God has blessed them and used them effectively in their ministry while they were abroad. But I want to give you a different view and a different angle how mission work is much closer than you expect. Mission work is actually closer than you expect. Don't get me wrong, I love to hear missionaries when they were coming, when I was a young believer, and they would tell us stories on how they lived. I said, wow, they live in this, and live in huts, or what they ate, or what they did. But more importantly, how God guided and mentored each missionary through the entire ministry when they were in that country, in that specific culture group and everything. And I believe we all heard testimonies and stories from missionaries before, okay? And it is these stories that ignite, inspire, invoke, involve us for mission work. It is the stories from the missionaries themselves that will kind of say, wow, I want to do that. I'll get sparked. I get ignited. I get inspired. I get invoked. It invokes me to do something to involve in mission work. See, we may not be called to be missionaries abroad. Okay? Not all of us are called to go mission abroad. But we could do mission work just locally right here. Okay, where we live, where we go to school, where we work, where we live. We can do this. How could we do this? We could begin by a story. Once we tell our stories to our friends, our families, our colleagues, to our classmates, we are already doing mission work. So let me start by saying that mission work begins with a personal story. Mission work begins with a personal story. Well, early this year, my wife Maria and I went to a short term to Singapore OMF headquarters. Now, for those who don't know what OMF was founded by Hudson Taylor, in the 1800s. And OMF Singapore headquarters is the headquarters for OMF worldwide. So for all missionaries, before they go onto the mission field, they were all gathered in Singapore for training before they go into the field. They will gather in Singapore to be equipped, to be trained, and it's a 6-week-long course. So they will be ready to go onto the mission field. And from there, they will just scatter to different countries and everything. And we met a lot of this potential, these missionaries from Germany, England, United States, Taiwan, from Australia. They all gathered there for that short period of time to be equipped and trained before they head out. So both Maria and I had the opportunity to meet these missionaries before they go. And we met some of these missionaries. And one thing, when we start to kind of get to know them, we asked them this question. And we just very intrigued. It says, why you want to become a missionary? Or why that group? Or why that country? Why? That's interesting. Like, they all come from different backgrounds, but why you want to become a missionary? Well, just like Jesus here, I'll use another paraphrase. Once again, an immense crowd gathered around him on the beach as he was teaching. So he got into a boat, sat down, and talked from there. His usual method of teaching was to tell the people stories. As we talked to these missionaries, we soon realized that their personal stories are so unique. How God led them, how God led them to become a missionary for that country, to that specific cultural group. We spoke to many missionaries. There was about a dozen or so missionaries, and each one of them had a unique story to tell. The more we heard, the more we glorified God, how God's able to use them to uplift them from where they are to move them to a new culture, to a new country. We met one couple from South America, and they were going to Southeast Asia, completely opposite end of the world. They had young kids, complete young kids, not knowing any culture, not knowing the language, the food, the society, or even any of the customs in Asia. They were uplifting their entire young kids' family from South America to Southeast Asia. The more we heard, the more we glorified God. How God's able to call individuals, couples, families to go over to do ministry there. See, listening to the stories, it just inspires us. And the question we should ask ourselves is, what are we doing for Jesus? What are we doing for Jesus? Are we just coming to church every Sunday, listen to this speaker here, and then go on our merry way and come back again next week? What are we doing for Jesus? If they're able to move from one home country to another country, what are we doing for Jesus? Each story we heard from these missionaries is a story of faith. How God has guided them and led them to be missionaries. You see, we don't often hear their personal stories from missionaries before they go onto the mission field. Most of the time when we see missionaries or hear missionaries, it's always when they come from the mission fields and how God has blessed them, how God has blessed him or her on the mission field. So this is something that both Maria and I were fortunate enough to know and to talk with them before they go. They don't know what expectation is, but everything is a step of faith here. And their personal story, each one has a step of faith, how God has led them to where they are before they head on to the fields. So next, mission work begins with a purposeful story. There's a purpose in all these missionaries to go abroad, not just for take a vacation to this country. There's a purpose. As a Christian ourselves, we all have a purpose in life. There's a purpose. Okay? It says here in 1 Peter, for you have been called for this purpose, because Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example so that you will follow in his step. You see, the missionaries at OMF that were being trained, they all had a purpose. They have a specific focus country, a focus group, what they want to do. We met another couple from South America, okay, and they were going to Cambodia. Okay, Cambodia. South America culture, Cambodia culture, not the same. Okay, so we asked this couple, like, why you want to be a missionary? How do you know there was a purpose to go to Cambodia? Well, they told us that once they always wanted to go on a mission trip. Okay, they want to do mission work, but this couple said one Sunday there was a missionary that just came from Cambodia. Okay, and they listened, and they felt that maybe God was calling them to go to Cambodia. They don't know yet, but they wanted to have confirmation from God whether Cambodia was the country that God is calling them to go. So this couple told us that next few Sundays they attended an event, completely separate event, and they don't know what was going to be in that event. They attended the event and they realized that they were showing a documentary film. And guess what country they were showing that documentary on? Cambodia. And immediately that couple know that was God's confirmation to say, you are going to Cambodia. They spent 1 year in Cambodia. They felt like home there. And now we met them in February before they go on long term as a missionary to Cambodia. We all have a purpose. Paul have been sent on a special mission by the Messiah Jesus, planned by God himself. I write this to God's congregation in Corinth and to the believers all over Achaia province. See, Paul had a special mission, a special purpose, why he was going. Special mission, special purpose by the Messiah Jesus himself. Next, mission work begins with a powerful story. Our lives, our personal stories are powerful. It could change and impact others. Our stories are powerful. Our personal stories are powerful. It says here in the paraphrase, you have minds like a snake pit. How do you suppose what you say is worth anything when you are so foul-minded? It is your heart, not the dictionary, that gives meaning to your words. A good person produces good deeds, and words season after season. An evil person is a blight on the orchard. Let me tell you something. Every one of these careless words is going to come back to haunt you. There will be time of reckoning. Words are powerful. Words are powerful. Take them seriously. Words can be your salvation. Words can be your damnation. Words makes up stories. Stories are full words. They're powerful. So when Maria and I came back from our OMF in Singapore, we had a kind of follow-up meeting with our local OMF mentor. And our mentor was kind of eager to say, how was it? How was the experience? What do you feel? How has it felt? What did it felt like? So let me give you a little background, what OMF Singapore headquarters is. Now, as you know, OMF has thousands and thousands of missionaries in Asia itself. Not just a few dozen, thousands. So the OMF Singapore headquarters is like an organization. There's finance, there's accounting. Okay. Well, the funds that the missionaries are raising, someone has to look after them and get distributed. They have to get paid, the missionaries. There's a legal department, let's say. A legal department, because every country has their own legal jurisdictions. So there's a huge legal department. Okay? There's resources that they could tap into. There is also a medical team that looks after the medical needs of each missionary. Okay? They will send teams, medical teams to the missionaries' countries and just to look after them. So it's a huge organization with the full organization departments and everything. So while I was there, when Maria and I were there serving, Maria was doing helping out in the kitchen, in the food services, okay, feeding the missionaries during this whole course, and everything. They have to eat too, right? So I was assigned to IT department as usual. My background is in IT, okay, and I cannot speak on Maria's behalf, but my task, as you know, IT today is a very important, critical aspect of anything now, especially for ministry and especially for missionaries. So before they go onto the mission field, we'll make sure the laptops are secured. Because some laptops are luxury items in third world countries. Okay, so we want to make sure it's secured. We want to make sure they have the latest, and greatest software that they can access the OMF websites. They could communicate with family, friends, and with OMF and with other missionaries. So we have to make sure that their laptops, their cell phones are enabled. Once they get onto the field, no one is going to support them. So we make sure that their laptops are good. And I also found out that in certain countries, if you have the word OMF discovered in your laptop, you'll be expelled from the country and you will never be able to enter that country again. Okay. So I just felt just doing my usual IT stuff with this missionaries, the laptops and everything. And as I sharing this with our mentor, our local OMF mentor here, and I realized a few things there. First, I realized that sending a missionary abroad, okay, for OMF, it takes an entire team, dozens and dozens of people. Okay, everybody from human resources to finance to accounting to the medical team to IT and everything. So a mission never goes alone. So when a missionary goes abroad to some third world country, isolated, they're never alone. They have to communicate back to the OMF head office, headquarters, okay, to update them. Then as I continue to share with our mentor, and I realized I just felt like it wasn't a big thing that I did, just setting up computers and everything. Then it started to dawn on me. The things I did for the laptops or the software or the IT for the missionary, even though I felt it was insignificant, was a huge contributing factor to the overall picture of supporting a missionary. See, we can all contribute what God has called us to do to support, to help a missionary. Just then our mentor said, Yves, this is your story. This is your story, that your story is powerful enough to impact others, just like me, to get them involved in mission work themselves. Nothing's insignificant. Mission starts with people just like you and me doing what God has called us to contribute to the overall picture of supporting a mission, a missionary. If you're good in accounting and you're good in finance, they require people, because missionaries need to have someone to look after their accounting, their finances. If you're in medical, if you're in any departments, marketing, there's also marketing. If you're good, they need to have all this to support missionaries. Someone has to do medical. Someone has to market what they're doing in that country. This was my story. So our mentor said, this is your story. This is powerful. It says here in Mark, how can we picture God's kingdom? What kind of stories can we use? It's like an acorn. When it lands on the ground, it's quite small as seeds go. Yet once it is planted, it grows into a huge oak tree with thick branches. Eagles nest in it. With many stories like this, he presented his message to them, fitting the stories to their experience and maturity. He was never without a story when he spoke. When he was alone with his disciples, he went over everything, sorting out the tangles and tying the knots. You see, here, my story will impact someone who's on the same path as me. I want to help out with missionaries, but I'm not good. I won't be a good missionary abroad, but I want to help in some way. Oh, I heard that Yves has helped in one way or another in IT, or in marketing, or in accounting. This is fitting stories to their experience. Missionaries have a huge support group And this is what we could do to support them one way or another. See, in this paraphrase, Jesus, compares the kind of story like an acorn that lands on the ground, and small as it be, it grows into a huge oak tree. You see, just like our stories can ignite, can inspire, invoke, and get us involved, missions locally or abroad, in one way or another. That's power in our story. Well, since we were serving at OMF, and I think all of you know about the story of Hudson Taylor and everything. His story of him working in China, how he captivated the many Christians there and everything. Now, I'm going to read a little paragraph in there. I know you can't see it, but I can blow it up for you here. Hudson Taylor's story of working in China in the mid-1800s has captivated generations of Christians, particularly those involved in overseas mission. His determination in the face of danger, faith amid bleak financial realities, and its groundbreaking cross-cultural sensitivity continue to inspire back then, continue to inspire even today. Hudson Taylor was a trailblazer. That's mission work. Lastly, mission work begins with a prayerful story. See, prayer is powerful. We may not be involved in missions, but we can all pray. It says here in Matthew chapter 21, Jesus replied, "Truly I tell you, if you have faith and do not doubt, not only can you do what was done to this fig tree, but you could say to this mountain, 'Go, throw yourself into the sea,' and it will be done. If you believe, you will receive whatever you ask for in prayer." See, we hear mission stories, how prayer works in their ministry. Prayer works. Prayer is powerful. Continue steadfast in prayer, being watchful in it with thanksgiving. At the same time, pray also for us, that God may open to us a door for the word. God opens door when we all pray. We hear stories from missionaries where societies, culture groups, countries that was once closed, now open to the gospel. Prayer is powerful. And also for me, that words may be given to me in opening my mouth boldly to proclaim the mystery of the gospel. You see, missionaries, just like you and me, they're not superhuman. There's cultural, language barriers. But God, will enable them through prayer, that open their mouth boldly to proclaim the mystery of the gospel. Yes, there's a lot of struggles at the beginning, but God's able to help them to overcome that. Speak boldly to proclaim the mystery of the gospel. Finally, brothers, pray for us that the word of the Lord may speed ahead and be honored as happened among you. See, we hear stories how missionaries face obstacles and setbacks as they start the ministry, because there's a lot of setbacks, barriers that they're trying to start. But prayer works. God opens doors. And as you see here, that the word of the Lord may speed ahead. God's word starts to spread from a few handful to a few hundreds to thousands. God's word spreads. When we hear how powerful and how effective prayer is, we just stand in awe. God is God of miracles. And this is what mission is all about. We have a prayerful stories. All of us has prayerful stories. Whether we're at school, at home, at work, we have prayerful stories. That is powerful enough. Well, in OMF Singapore, this is the existing building today. In the dining room, there's a story how OMF was bought the existing location today. And it's a story of prayer. So let me blow it up. I know you can't read this. I'll blow it up. For 2 years, a property which rapidly became too small for need was rented in Chancery Lane. That's an area in Singapore. After a long search, another very suitable, a large colonial-style house set in 2 acres of land, came onto the market at 2 Colonial Road. That's today's existing building. The asking price was Singapore 170,000, which is far more than OMF had in hand. And the mission had a no-debt policy. There was much prayer over the matter. During the following months, the price dropped to 105,000 Singapore. Would you take it? Asked the agent. We can only give you 85,000 and no more, answered the mission representative. Someone sadly hung up the phone. It was the amount that they had in hand, much of it contributed by the missionaries themselves. No less than 5 minutes later, the phone rang again. Take it, said a rather abrupt voice. There was much prayer over the matter. You see, God can move hearts through prayer. God can move hearts of the seller. This is their story. And this is hanging in the OMF dining room. This was 1954. An asking price of 170,000 dropped down to 105, and they bought it for 85,000. That's prayer. That's power. Again, the location today is situated in one of the most expensive areas in Singapore. Just the land itself today is worth over 200 million. Just the land itself. Okay, so you can truly see that God's hands at work here. Let's imagine, okay, how God is able to do this. It's a miracle itself. Powerful. Story works. Prayer works. Mission works. So, in conclusion, mission work begins. We all have a story to tell. It is our story. It's our testimony. It is your story. It's your testimony. We can all share with others. This in itself is mission. Mission field locally or abroad. Mission work begins with a personal story. We all have a personal, unique story to tell. Each one of us. We all have a purposeful story. We all have a purpose. We have a testimony how God works in our lives. There's a purpose. Powerful story. We all have a story that is powerful, displaying God's glory, His guidance, His mighty works in you. We all have a prayerful story. How God answers our prayers and telling others that God is a true God, an active living God working in our lives. Our stories will ignite, inspire, involve us for mission work, whether locally or abroad. See, these stories we share to others is in fact the mission work that we could do locally or abroad. Tell our stories. To who? Tell our stories to our friends, our families, our colleagues, to our neighbors, to our relatives. That is the mission field. So that your story is able to make God known and be glorified. So, what story do we do? What do we do with our story? We share it. We share our story. What story do we share? We share our testimony. How God is working in our lives. Who do we share it to? We share our testimony to others. To others. Why? So they can relate and respond to your story. And whose story is this? It's your story. Share your story. Remember, one does not need to go overseas to be a missionary. You can be a missionary right here in Toronto to do mission work. All you need is to tell your story to others so they will come and know and accept Jesus Christ. What's your story? Let's pray. Dear God, we thank you, Lord. Ignite us, Lord. Inspire us, invoke us. Involve us to do mission work locally, Lord, by sharing our stories to others, Lord. How God has used our lives, okay, so others will know. We dare to be different, Lord. Truly, Lord, each of our lives is living testimonies of your amazing salvation, your amazing grace.